So good morning, everybody. I'd like to just let you into a little secret. I'm doing this for the very first time. Thank you, Mike. Very, very excited, though, about the topic, about the prospect. So I wanted to say a special thank you to the team at Rishihood. I've really just met Dr. Mishra Sahil this morning, and I know Mike, but it really does sound very, very exciting. Without being boring, I'm going to give 2 seconds of background on me because I think sometimes people are confused. I was actually born in Kerala, and I grew up in boarding schools in Tamil Nadu until the age of 14. Then I finished my education in Scotland. I met an Indian in London in the 1980s, and I came to live in Delhi in 1986. So I'm pretty much a Delhiwali. And I learned to drive here, and I set up my business here. So I think I can take on most aspects of Delhi life. But it's really exciting to be here. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to introduce my panel. And then I'm going to ask each of our panelists to just talk a little bit on the topic, which is what does industry want from a creative school? And I must say I'm really thrilled. Mike has chosen very, very diverse panel, but we're all quite connected because creativity is a very important part of each one of our industries. So I'm going to do the introductions, and then I'm going to ask each person just to speak. And after each person speaks, I think we'll try and do a little bit of a little bit of conversation. And at the end, if there's anybody in the audience who would like to speak, then we'll welcome, questions, observations. So without further ado, I am going to start just in the order in which I'm going to start in the order of everybody's sitting. So on my right here, I have Mandira Malik, who's known as Ruma. She's the founder of a buying agency called Something Else, so we actually work in the same industry. She was also the CEO and founder of Mana Studio Line, which was a brand which created rather beautiful product, which you were retailing in India. And she's also one of the founder members of our association, the Buying Agents Association, which we formed just 3 years ago now. So we are old friends and know each other well. Next to Ruma, we have Rajat, who I am meeting for the first time and delighted. He's the founder and CEO of Chaos, a branding and strategic design company which aims for design to be meaningful. So I will be letting Rajat talk about himself and about his views on the topic. Next to Rajat, we have Sunita Kohli. I don't think she needs much introduction in India. She is the founder of K2 India, and she started her career in 1971. She is an architectural restorer, interior designer, and furniture manufacturer. And she is the first person to get the Padma Shri in this field in our country. So I think she's quite something. Sunita has also been chairperson of the Bhopal School of Planning and Architecture. So I'm sure she's going to have a lot of interesting things to say on our topic. Next to Sunita is Catherine Trotman. She's currently head of home at Fabindia. Her previous lives, she owned a retail brand for home products in Hong Kong. And interestingly, she started her career in the 1980s, but her first trip to India was with Liberty, the quite old and quite beautiful department store in London, when they were doing a store promotion on India. So whether it was and her first trip to India was to find product to put in the store there. So we welcome Catherine. And last but not least, we have Parminder Singh, otherwise known as Bubbles to all of us, who started his working career, I believe, in 1977? 1997, sorry, with a company called Cure Inde. Bubbles is a graduate of NIFT, so again, I think, we've got people with design background, we've got people who are working in design, but for all of us, design is important. And Cure Inde is a well-known manufacturer of very beautiful products for some global brands like Fendi, Armani Casa, among others. And he more recently founded Loco Design, which I'll allow him 2 minutes or a minute to talk about when he gets his slot. And basically we're going to kick off the session, and if everybody can remember, our topic is what does the industry want from a creative school? So I'm going to start in the middle with Sunita, if that's all right with you. Would you like to start? So feel free if anybody wants to stand up and speak or use the mic.
I think from here. Thank you for that very generous introduction. Yes, I'm probably the person who has worked the longest in the field of design, because in 2 years' time, it will be 50 years. And the Padma Shri came a long time back in 1991. Having said that, I have, my background is of literature, BA Honours, Masters, incomplete PhD on Christopher Marlowe, and I also have a BA in Hindustani classical music. Now, the reason why I say all this is because one would not associate these subjects with design. But as far as I'm personally concerned, I do not think I would have been a designer had I not studied literature. And to fast forward it to 2014, when I became the chairperson of the School of Planning and Architecture in Bhopal, I thought this was a very exciting opportunity to infuse into education a liberal arts curriculum, because I found that there was a lack of the study of history and certainly no literature. And also there was a lack of what I consider ways that bring about creativity, which is you students and young students, and particularly in institutions like that where they come from various parts of the country and belong to different social strata, that they should be professors, and those who know better should teach them how to see. We all are fortunate. I certainly grew up with parents who came as refugees from Lahore, where I was born, but they were very educated. And so what they came out, they might have lost everything that was material, but they came out with their education and their sense of values. So I grew up in Lucknow, even though I carry a Punjabi surname, that is from my husband. My mother's Balochi, my father's a Rajput, but a naturalized Lahori. But I feel a UPite. Now UP and Lucknow are, everybody says Lucknow is laid back in one sense when you compare it to Delhi and Bombay. But what it does have still, it has a deeply syncretic culture, which is one of acceptance and not tolerance. What we in Lucknow call Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb. These are all things that impact on creativity and on design, because you cannot separate one from the other. It is when the Parsis came and they said, we will be like, what was it? We will be like milk into which you put water, or sugar that you put into, thank you for that. And you will not be able to separate the sugar from the milk. So we ourselves have the great fortune to be this great multicultural country. These impact on design, and these are the bedrocks of design, of good design. You cannot separate in our country what came from, what influenced what. Because India is this great and wonderful melding pot of many cultures. And Dr. Mishra spoke about DNA. I'm sure in North India at least, I'm a practicing Hindu, but I'm sure in North India, if one were to take my DNA, I'm bound to have I'm bound to, my DNA will go back probably to some Turkic tribe who might have followed another religion. So what are we speaking about? So to come back to education, I think it is important. Firstly, I do not think creativity can begin unless students are taught our histories. Students are taught to travel even within the village or the city that they live in. Students are taught to see even vernacular architecture. I mean, I think the first conference on South Asian vernacular architecture, I had advocated and championed whilst I was the chairperson at SPA Bhopal. And we had 400 delegates, out of which 190 were vernacular architects. Now, why are we not taught all this? And to sum it up, I think what we need is that all curricula and curriculums need to be revisited. They need to just not be, there's not the emphasis on what are called, there should be an emphasis on what are called soft subjects, which is literature, which also includes literature of various languages, because now so many publishing houses are doing wonderful jobs. So I think at the end of it, creativity, critical thinking, which is practiced in many countries and quite effectively, has to be extremely broad-based. And from there, you can then start teaching how to be creative and also how to be disciplined, because that, I think, is lacking in today's students. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sunita. Is this working? Yeah, I think so. So I just wanted to see if anybody on the panel wanted to add anything there. I mean, I think the point is very, very clear. Two things. India is not one country. India is a multitude of races, a multitude of countries, a multitude of levels of upbringing, levels of education, and I think it's important that the university with this vision is, I would be interested actually to throw that subject out, but how does my panelists see when they're interviewing people or hiring people, what do they feel is lacking? Perhaps we could talk for a few minutes on that. Anybody want to take that subject?
Good morning. My name is Parminder, but nobody knows me by that name because everybody calls me Bubbles since I was a child. Every time somebody calls me Parminder, I turn around and I know that he could only be from my school, because everywhere else it's Bubbles. Well, I just wanted to touch upon what Mike talked about earlier, just in 2 lines. I think what I learned from my education at the design school, and what was the best part of the learning, was not about drawing or about visualizing a product. It was the method of visualizing that product. And what I till date do believe is something that one of the faculty members told me, which is, you need to dream like a child, but you need to interpret like a realist. And never forget, you need to design for business, and it's not for art. Also, touching upon what Mr. Mishra earlier said, do schools kill creativity? I strongly believe yes, because there are a handful of really good teachers that one always remembers right through their childhood and their adulthood, and few of them create a very, very strong impact, and those are the people who make the difference in their life. And I think the onus is on the faculty to realize, what a good faculty is, and to take it forward. I have a long list of things that I can add. We've earlier, talked about some very broad aspects of design, but what I wanted to bring to the table is what is the ground reality of what is happening today, and what the expectation, and what is the difference between a graduate's expectation and the industry expectation. Well, the first thing that we need to understand is that, from our experience, what we understood is that design intervention is not about just creating a product. It works at various different levels, and it works in various different aspects of realizing a product. And there are enough and more opportunities at every level. It is up to the person who's being educated and the person who's educating, who needs to realize where the potential of a particular person is, and to make sure that it's that is strengthened, and one realizes where what he or she should be doing in the long run. Just to touch upon 3 or 4 different aspects of where the industry is today, is if I'm hiring a person today, we've got different levels of businesses, and we look at various different aspects of where that particular person could fit in. Although the graduates would come with a very different expectation, but the reality on the ground would be very different. I'm sure Christine and Catherine have also been through the same experiences when they're hiring people. Of when a customer is approaching us with a certain expectation, it may or may not be to design an entire product. It could be about conceptualization, it could be about an adaptation, or it could be about visualization or a variation. Now, these are various aspects which at the level of education we don't really touch upon, and we can't, because this is something which is the reality of the industry. But when a child comes to an office and wants to work on design, their expectation is that they would be completely reinventing the wheel. But that's not the reality. We need to firstly teach them what the reality of the industry is. That's where the industry and the universities and the design schools should be adapting. That's where we should be relating to each other. Well, once that reality is inculcated in a student, I feel it's a much stronger foundation for that person to go forward and then contribute to the industry.
I mean, would you say, Bubbles, that one of the, I think, key things, and I notice it a lot, is that, you go to school, you go to college, you go to university, and then you go to work. And what I tell everybody who comes to work is it's not what you know, it's what you do with it when you come to the workspace. You can have learned as much as you like, or not learned. I mean, here am I, I'm a student of modern languages, German and French, so I had to learn Hindi, I had to learn how to run a business. Sunita is a student of literature, and here she is running a business, designing furniture, designing interiors. So it's really what you do with it. And I think if as a modern university, Rishihood can somehow release that mindset, because and I would like maybe one of our other panelists to talk about, maybe Catherine, Ruma, Rajat, on this sort of rigidity of mindset. I mean, it's really probably our biggest barrier. So can I ask somebody else?
Okay, I'm going to put a cat among the mice right now, because I completely disagree. Creativity is not about following the expected. creativity is about challenging it. Creativity is about nonconformity. Creativity is about overcoming your fear. Why is a child creative and why is an adult not? Because that phase, that entire passage of life, from being a child to being an adult, is to conform, is to color within the lines. It is to do exactly what is expected. And that is how you lose creativity. Doing a job and being creative can be the same thing. But how you do it depends upon you. You can make it better. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but you can make it run faster. We came from a bullock cart and we went to a plane. The wheel remains the same. So I'm just going to take a minute on this, Bubbles, because this is something I feel very strongly about. Why is India still in our industry considered one of the most creative parts of the world? China produces a huge amount of design graduates. Are they creative? In our industry, they're considered not. They're mass production analysts. India is still considered creative. In our little corner of the world, we are considered creative. One of the most difficult parts that I feel India is facing today is conformity. Anything spoken against the rule of whatever is not accepted. Nobody can say, I disagree, and live to tell the tale. So I have a small life story to share with you, and I'm going to do that specifically because of fear. I was 16, an academically bright kid, and I told my parents I wanted to leave school and join an art school. I had the advantage the government gave by saying after the 10th, you could go to a design school. Most parents, 99.99999%, will think you're crazy. And my parents told me, if you are sure, go for it. I left school. I joined design school. But I knew there was no fear. I could do what my heart wanted to do. I did well in India. And then I got accepted to the Parsons School of Design, which is considered, well, the Mecca of design. And the first thing they taught me, I thought I was a nonconformist till I left India. Because everybody in India told me, and my parents, they were nuts. They sent me alone to Paris when I was 19 to follow my dreams. So everybody assumed they were crazy, I was crazy, this was a girl going bad. And I was convinced that I was a rebel, very happy with that title, and I was a nonconformist. Till I went to the Parsons School of Design. And the first thing my professors did for the next 4 years was to beat conformity out of me. Every project that they marked, they would make me scream and shout and tell them they were wrong and I was right. Very few professors in India accept that. Our society doesn't accept that. But my professors taught me what I was doing on design was special to me. And it made no difference whether they accepted that ideology or not. What they taught me was it was only important that I had reviewed my ideology completely. That I had a mature concept to my ideology. And that drove the fear finally out of my system. Today, when we have young people coming to our offices, and I'm sorry for all my senior colleagues for saying that, the first thing I tell them, don't be scared. Make your mistakes. Let me see how your mind works. Let me teach you or guide you when you make a mistake. But God, make that mistake. But till you make that mistake, you will not learn. I am the safety net. My clients will still get the service they want. But my team will remain puppets and shadows of me if they do everything I want. And I'm not the ultimate, they are. So I don't want people to come to me telling me they know it all. They don't. That's the worst thing about NID. NID tells every kid who comes in, you are the best, and you know it all by the time you go out. And when they come to me, I say, you may be the best, but I want to see it. I want to see that mind tick. So, the learning, the nonconformity, the rejection of fear, this is what I feel our society needs and what an educational institute must give to a child.
I'll just try and bring it back to the industry. So, you know, one of the areas that I'd like to sort of draw attention to is how we must allow kids in university to mature and mature for industry, because you know, industry is about complexity. Industry is about and you know, one trick ponies don't work anymore. India has built billion-dollar businesses on one trick ponies, right? Increasingly, with the advent of technology and augmented intelligence, it's getting complex. And to sit on top of that complexity, I would any day have a creative person there, right? And the ability of the creative person to find the simplest of ideas, right? On top of that complexity is just, that's the delta. And that's the delta that industry is looking for, right? So a couple of key words. Sorry, I come from that industry, so that's how it sort of works in my head. That's
all right. You're allowed your keywords.
is agility. You know, I find a lot of students kids that come to us, you know, just not agile enough. Just they're stuck in these loops, right? And sometimes right. So you want to just go out there and do, right? And a lot of times doing solves a lot of problems. I'm happy if you're 90% there. Just put it out. Take some feedback, right? And I think it's really important that these kids also are taught entrepreneurship, creative entrepreneurship, because that's really where the rubber hits the road, right? And you want them to be sort of, you know, on the road, trying to figure it out, how it works, what doesn't work, and going back and solving that problem in an agile sense, right? And if we get that, you know, we've got leaders, right? Yeah.
Hi, Catherine. So I may be British, but I've had most of my career in India, and now have the privilege of running Fabindia Home, which is also a huge responsibility, a big brand which represents so much of what India is brilliant at. I want to go back to the craftsperson, where, of course, some of the biggest pool of talent lies in terms of creativity. No surprise, they're very often very poorly educated, so they haven't had the creativity bashed out of them. I see our job as a brand, as a stable of craft, to make their craft relevant for today's market, primarily for us in India, but also we are working globally as well. We, as everyone is acknowledging, need creative youth, but they need to, in our context of industry, be able to work within the framework for us of a brand and an ethos and a DNA. So they need to put their ego away. If they want to be creative for the sake of being creative, set up their own business, go into the world of art, fine art, that's wonderful. But as an industry professional, we need people who can understand our purpose, our intent, and to a certain degree, design-wise, toe the line so that we can tell a story and be consistent, relevant, authentic. And that, as we've just discussed, we have students coming out of NID who think they know it all. They want to put their handwriting on a product, which is not relevant to us at a corporate level. So if we're talking about industry, which is the main focus of this seminar, we need students who have the agility and the discipline to move within that framework. Within Fabindia, we've had PricewaterhouseCoopers advising and consulting and cutting everything every way, but a core piece of work that we are doing is named Design to Shelf, and it is taking the very starting blocks of a craft or a product and making it seamless to the end, so that once it's on the shelf in the store, once it's on the website, every element of design has been considered. And this is something that I find lacking. The packaging, the positioning of a label, the functional elements. I mean, something might look wonderful, but can you fit a flower pot in the planter? You know, there is a gap in our design students' ability at the moment. The other massive lacking part for me is curation. Everybody heads off in their silos, and there's not enough holistic curation that happens. And for me, as a retail and a product person, visual merchandising, telling the story, putting it on the shelf, making it hold its own place, and giving it a life of its own within a context. So relevance, functionality, curation, and we have a moral responsibility to give the craftsman a good standing. You know, I think at Fabindia, we think we employ 55,000 different craftspeople. We have a moral and ethical responsibility to do the best by them. Any comments?
So, yeah, I was good. I'll give Rajat the mic back. I think very, very interesting. We've got quite a few different perspectives, but I think if I had to quickly pinpoint, it seems that all of my panelists believe that education, as it is taught today, is beating the creativity out of everything, whether it's design creativity, whether it's work creativity, whether it's entrepreneurial creativity. So maybe we could ask for some suggestions, starting with Rajat, on what could be, what would you like to see done differently? Because I think we're talking to an academic audience. If they're starting a brand new university, what suggestions would we make from the industry? I'm going to let Rajat speak first.
So I'm actually going to now point the finger back at industry, and I think that's really where we need to start. I don't think industry is making enough investment in building tribes of designers. This is at the heart of who these companies are going forward, right? I'm talking to a lot of clients saying, is design at the core of your business? Right? I'm sure for Fabindia it is, but For many other industries, it's not. I mean, we meet real estate companies, and they hire architects from the outside. I'm amazed I don't see enough architects on boards of real estate companies. Right? That's the other part, right? When we started Chaos many years ago, one of the internal missions I gave to myself is, I want creative people to be back at the board level. Because when I left the last company I was working for, we were the right-hand guys sitting on the side of the chairman. And then came along McKinsey, and I don't see them having a creative practice, right? So it's about time we sort of start pushing in that direction.
So what you're saying is it's very important to balance, number, business acumen with creativity, because one without the other is a very boring place. Sunita, please.
We must always remember that design firms or firms that deal with craftspeople, it is a business. I have run 2 companies for many, many years, one to do with interior design with an emphasis on public buildings and hotels, amongst them several in Egypt and Parliament House in Bhutan, so at that level. My daughter, Kohli, who's an architect, she started her own because she did not wish to be associated with me in case somebody thought that she was feeding off my reputation. But in 2000, why I say this is, I'm coming to a point, 2010, we put it all under one umbrella, K2 India. Now I think we are a deeply design, architectural company. And I have always worked with master craftsmen. I mean, that has been a hallmark of my work because I'm known as a research-based designer. But when it comes to what you see as education, what I think is lacking, I think education should lead to knowledge. And out of knowledge should come wisdom. You don't have to be old to be wise. You can also be young and wise. So that, I have purposely been speaking more along the philosophy of design and what, as simply as I could, rather than, the bricks and mortar of running a design business or related to it. But what do we need out of this? What do we need out of students? We need out of students, when we employ mainly architects in our studio. But they come after 5 years and some also after 7 years. They have not become independent, critical thinkers.
Yeah, it's critical thinking that's missing completely from
So what is it that is lacking? I think there are a lot of we need to take a hard look at all schools of design. I know there are over 200 architectural schools in India, because one has had various, 2 major competitions in Bhopal. So we know that out of the principal schools there are that many. But I would love it if a young architect is given a job of work and can work independently. But they do not. So we need to really think hard, what is it that we are not doing correctly, and self-correct our education. Of course, it's not just schools of architecture. It's schools across the board. And also, I think young people are, this is something to do with the generation. They want instant success without working hard at something, without taking responsibility, without taking ownership for a design. So how do you teach this? I think this cannot just come out of design schools. This is a malaise that is across our educational systems?
Yeah, I'd like to just say two words there. I think what is very clear is that Rishihood has understood that creativity is the issue. So even if you're a designer, you need to be creative, because otherwise you can't function. Even if you're a business person, you need to be creative, because without that creativity, the problem is that as the education system stands today, I don't think there's very much creativity allowed within the education system in our country. And I think unless, as a country, we start to address that, we can talk about creativity till the cows come home, and then we're still going to have to start when people come into our companies. So maybe we can pass the mic to Bubbles down there, if you have anything you would like to say. And perhaps another thought that I want to put on the table is how accepted in our culture or our society today is a course like this. The very nature that this is an alternative course, I think it's going to be quite a hard sell. And I would recommend Rishihood to really start talking to industry, because we will all promote this kind of education, because we need it. If we're going to bring people into our businesses, we want them to think creatively. They can have studied design, they can have studied languages, they can have studied architecture, but if they're don't have a creative mind where they know how to apply and how to function within what that company wants to do. I think what Rajat said was very correct. You can't be creative for the sake of it. You've got to be able to understand the needs of the business. So speaking from an industry perspective, maybe Bubbles, if you could say a little bit to that. Thanks.
I'm going to restart, but I'm still going to be the cat. See, I've gone through all of this in the last 20 years that we've all talked about. I've been a student, I've struggled, I've conformed, and then we've broke away from conformity, and now I do believe that we lead the industry. I think Christine would agree with me, in a lot of different ways. We've changed the way the industry thought about what the country can deliver. What I wanted to elaborate on when the mouse came in was that we cannot run away from the reality of the industry. That is really, really important, that we understand as to what the demands of the industry are today. But then I agree with Rajat in the sense that, is the industry also giving back enough to the to the students and the education industry at the same time? We as a company, we invest hugely, personally, emotionally, financially. We are trying to create things constantly and break away from the norm. But how many of the students who come in, how many of the children who come in to work with us are able to deliver that is always a question mark. Whether they are absolutely fresh, whether they have 3 years, 5 years, 7 years of experience, I've always found it difficult that it's extremely difficult to get them to be creative in the first place, because they probably have misunderstood the very basis of design.
Bubbles, we're going to send everybody to Ruma for that training.
Absolutely.
she's just signed up.
I was going to tell them to forget everything you taught them.
So I think the relationship between what we touched upon earlier. Fabindia has done a fabulous job with completely reinventing the way people thought of what clothing could be. They have put into context a simple thing like a kurta pajama. Today, anybody and everybody can wear it, and it's in context. Whereas about 15 years back, it was seen as the dress code for JNU. Today, it's the cool thing to do. So, it takes time, and it takes immense amount of patience and immense amount of what we call willpower to actually get it done. So the onus is on the industry, the onus is on the educational institutes, the onus is also on the students to come together and understand where where the situation is today and where can we take it to in the future. Like Mr. Mishra earlier said, 20 years from today, it's going to be a very different ball game. And we as a company would want to be ready for it. I am ready for it, but is the second person, my right-hand person, is he ready for it or is she ready for it? And I can very easily say no, because it is, and it's a constant irritant for, for me, and I know a whole lot of people in our company, that why can't people think differently? Why can't people think more globally? Why is it constantly an interpretation of an image from Instagram or Pinterest, which is being put on our table as the coolest thing to do? So I think that is...
Bubbles, I'm just going to step in here, right? And just try and get your thoughts on this one. I'm quickly, in my practice, I'm quickly starting to realize that creativity isn't just going to remain in the domain of the creatives, right? I mean, I'm seeing MBAs coming out with amazing data visualization skills, and it just completely transforms the way you look at that data, right? And we saw a doctor saying, if the AI is going to take over that prostate cancer surgery, the doctor is going to be talking about, well, psychology, right after that, far more than right? So let's just talk about that for a bit, because creativity is becoming a STEM subject now, and I think we should approach it, because that's the future. The past is gone, right? We need to start looking at what next.
I'm just going to give you a short one, because as usual, I completely disagree with you, because, with Bubbles, because how can you expect your second person in command to know how to think if you don't let him? He has to know how to think, and he can think. Believe me, he can.
Remember,
dead the next minute.
What I said was, it irritates me that he can't.
But you have to let him.
Of course he would. Of course we let them.
I'm just going to.
But they're not choosing to. That's the problem. That's where the problem is.
I'm going to share a very funny story with you, because 35 years that I've been in this industry and trying to do design and put it into mainstream. We went to Amroha, and there were these painters. I was trying to do different kind of illustrations. Now these guys used to traditionally paint trucks, and we were taking them into a different area of painting. And I sat in this little room, it was deadly hot, with about 15 men, and they were watching me draw. And I drew a rose, I drew a tulip, I drew a chrysanthemum. And I said, you have to go beyond how you draw. It's just thought, okay? And they looked and they peered at me as if I was doing magic. I was drawing. And after a while I said, do you understand that you have to draw, there's a difference between a rose and a chrysanthemum and a tulip and a lotus, for example. And they all very sincerely nodded their heads. And I said, okay, I gave the pens over to them and I said, just draw for me how you would draw a rose and a tulip and a chrysanthemum. Every flower they drew was a lotus. That is conditioning of craftspeople that have happened today.
But also lack of exposure, Ruma.
Absolutely.
Lack of exposure,
because
where they're going to see a chrysanthemum.
They cannot fathom. Their hands go on auto mode. The connection that we are taught in design school, to go from the brain and to your fingers, there's a direct connect. We were taught how you draw without looking, because the brain was instructing your fingers. Drawing is a skill. It's not a talent. We mistake that. Yeah, please.
So just to sort of, and just to elaborate on that, I was talking to a VC guy the other day, and with a non-banking financial guy, and he says, if I get 2 CVs, right, and this is directly relevant to your school, and it says, you know, MBA from London Business School, and the other one says Stanford. But if I see theater on one of the CVs, I'll pick that guy first, right? And that's what I was trying to emphasize earlier, which is today creativity is a STEM subject. It is so fundamental to an individual's, you know, total personality. And I think that's what we need to continue to focus on. Do not just pick art students, pick them from all over, right? That's what we need. We need creativity at the heart of everything that people do.
Should we not also, it sounds, I don't wish to be cynical, but should we also not lower expectations of what is creativity? Because to my mind, creativity is a gift. It can be honed upon. You can learn the skill. And you can, but at the core, in your inner eye, like you, there has to be that core of creativity. It is like musicians. Either you have perfect pitch and you have that and you can train that. But if you don't have that talent, and for that, how do you teach? I mean, you know, young children, everybody can do something, but don't lead them up the garden path that they're going to be creative. That depends upon professors and the people who
Faculty,
know
yeah.
how to guide them. I mean, there are wonderful people who are in design, but say at Parsons,
No creativity.
they're learning the business of design because they know they cannot be designers. Somebody has to tell them that, you know, and I think that is being realistic.
No, I agree completely, and I think number one, India has a higher percentage of creativity in our DNA. I think there's no doubt about it. I mean, you know, I used to go to the flower market every week, buy the flowers for the house, do the arranging, and then suddenly my life took over and I didn't have time and I delegated it. And I don't even know who does the flowers in my house, but they're beautiful. I don't know who chooses. Somebody else chooses the flowers. So I had given them a list of flowers they can't buy, but we have beautiful flower arrangements, and it's not somebody who went to any sort of school design. So it's creativity. I think to Ruma's point, Sunita's point, and the whole panel, it is how do you bring that out and how do you channel it in the right direction? Some of those creative people can be designers, but most of us can't be designers. I'm not a designer, but I like to think that I'm creative.
Yeah, but you're creative in what you do.
But as I was saying, so the word creativity is a very broad one, and I think Rishihood has hit the nail on the head. But your challenge is going to be pointing people in the right direction. What is their creativity? Is it financial? Is it technical? Is it interiors? Or is it just being able to sketch? I mean, or curate. So it's really, you know. So I think we're running out of time. Nobody's flashing signs at me. The man with the rude sign disappeared. So I just think maybe Catherine and Bubbles at the end of the table want to say a quick word on the subject before I sum up. We did start 10 minutes late.
I think, I mean, everything that's been said is relevant, and everything the opposite is also true. I mean, it's a massive, massive topic. What is creativity? And we haven't even begun to define that properly. But going back to the core sense of the question, what does industry want? And I think there are certainly, I mean, my world is product and retail, and there are some core skills: curation, visual merchandising, styling. They're all new to India. They're not new. I mean, people have been styling and putting things together for years because there is an amazing innate sense of style and design here, but they need to be formally taught, and they need to be recognized as a career path, and at the moment it's the domain for the rich and the privileged. I mean, every stylist I meet has had a very good education, and mostly female, but it doesn't need to be that way, and it could be a much more mainstream set of skills for a lot of children or students who haven't had the same opportunities as the people who are currently doing those jobs. So I think it's something that can be rolled out at a much bigger level. And those are core skills that I would like to see coming out of a creative school if you want to be relevant for industry in my world.
There's just one more thing that I wanted to add, which should be
It's a good job they're sitting on either
part
end of my panel.
a part of what the education needs to be, which is inculcating professionalism. That's the one area where we've, in 20 years of our experience, we've felt that most students have lacked, and that comes from several different levels. One is freedom of thought. It's really important, but putting it in context is equally important. I think that's something which most rebels forget, that they are in an institution to do something which the institution believes in, not just what they believe in. They can contribute, they can break barriers, they can do anything that they want, but they cannot forget the context of that particular industry. It is critical for us to know that is what professionalism means to the industry. It may be completely different for the student who may just come in, and that's something that we've seen globally when we work very closely with design houses from Ralph Lauren or for Fendi or from any one of these people. Everybody knows exactly where to draw the line, and they understand where what their contribution to the whole process is, and then let the other person who's probably more creative than them in something that they don't understand, and that's I think very important. We need to draw those lines wherever our roles need to end.
Okay, I think we have run out of time, so I would like to just say a big thank you to the complete panel. Thank you, Bubbles, Catherine, Sunita. Oh, we have a question. 1 second, Bubbles, Sunita. We'll take one question from the audience. Can you get a mic down there at all? 2 questions. Do you want to grab one? Do you want to take those 2 mics? Or just take one mic and share it. Do we have time for 2 questions? Yeah, Sahil? I think 2 questions. You're the 3rd one. We'll see if Sahil allows it. No, can you start with the lady there? She was the first one. Thank you.
So I just wanted to address the question that Christine asked, creativity is going to be a hard sell, you said, right?
Well, I said, I said, how does the room feel? A course like this is going to be accepted, by the traditional parent who wants his or her child to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an MBA. How are you going to sell creativity? And please don't start with MBAs in creativity.
No,
that's not the right
I'll come
way.
to it. So
maybe, I can't answer that question.
No, ma'am, I'm answering.
You're answering it. Okay, thank you.
Yes. So, ma'am, I introduce myself as an engineer, electronics engineer with PhD in artificial intelligence, and I am a painter. And I introduce myself as 6 of my 20 mentees are having their own startups in their final year, and one of them is in 2nd year, and he is employing the students of final year.
Fabulous. So I think Rishihood should be getting you on their faculty or somehow. Thank you.
So, ma'am, I do design workshops, and I do brainstorming idea sessions also. So the question here is, do we have to design the curriculum for each and every student? Truly speaking, it has to be designed. And then who is going to validate it? Would Rishihood validate it? Now, the answer to your question, that can we have tie-ups with other universities where engineers and MBAs all are there, and in every semester we have one course of creativity or maybe design inside the curriculum, so that my students, engineering students, they have 8 semesters. By the time they pass out, they have 8 courses of creativity with them.
That
So
sounds
this
like
kind
it sounds like a fabulous idea.
Thank
Absolute
you.
dream.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. The lady in the stripy.
I am Dr. Neeta Avasthi, ma'am.
Thank you. I think you should introduce yourself to the team from Rishihood. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, can we have the mic to the lady here, the stripy?
Thank you. It was very interesting listening to the panel. Let me introduce myself. I'm Nilima Saxena. Last 30 years or so, I've been working on on a subject called landscape designing. It's not sort of a question I'm going to ask. I'm just going to speak just few words on why there's so much confusion on the word creativity. I just have been lucky to, I heard someone speaking that it's very important to travel. So I have been lucky to travel so much. I've almost lived on 4 continents, not just the countries, and almost seen around a lot of India. And I feel India is one of the most creative. People of India are very creative. They just need some outlets.
Thank you, Neela. I think you're saying quite a lot what has been said on the panel. And
no, I have just one.
But if you're not asking a question, I'm going to ask you to interact with the panel after the session because we are
just
running
one
out
question
of time.
I am asking.
Could you please ask the question?
Why are we discussing this subject when it's directly related to what sort of education is coming in from all over?
I think that is the point that we have said several times, that the real key is to go down the education chain because we're not in a position, we're the end of the food chain, we are the employers of people who've been educated, and as somebody who has grown up in this country, I think what Rishihood is doing is brilliant. But it will take more than one university to change the trend, and you will need to start at the school level because that's clearly from Mike's statistics, Dr. Mishra's statistics. The creativity is getting beaten out of people as they move up the food chain. So your point is very valid. But on the subject of travel, I think everybody in this room has traveled extensively. But what about the other, 99 point whatever % of this country who are not able to travel? How can we reach that? So we had one last question, the gentleman there in front of the camera. Thanks. I'm going to have to ask you, Neelima. We'll chat to you afterwards. We're all here for lunch. We'll chat. I think I'm going to take one more question, and then I think we need to call it a day.
I'm Prabhakant Jain. Basically, I'm a CSR professional, corporate social responsibility. And actually, I'm associated with a project called Creativity Adda that we started in a government school basically in North Delhi. Wow. So, for example, you are saying that that Mr. Mishra is saying that around at the age of 10 to 12 years of age, 30% children are creativity is remaining in the children. So our aim is basically to catch those children at the age of early, so that we can work with them creatively. And my son is basically a 10-year-old and he's an unschooler, so he's not going to any school in this place. So that is also one of the aspects where actually I'm trying to promote his creativity. Then my question is actually what is the core 3 or 4 essential requirement for in creativity in education, or maybe a creative education? What could be the 4 essential requirement? I personally believe in the freedom.
I think this is a question for Rishihood, so I don't think the panel
will be answered
can
in the
answer it.
next panel.
Maybe the next panel. So I'm going to have to say thank you very much. No.
I don't think we will have time.
We said 3 questions. Okay, Ruma wants the last question at the back of the room. You're always that person.
Well, thank you very much for letting me ask the question. So, we've spoken a lot about where to draw boundaries and where to express your creative freedom. The one thing I wanted to really, really ask you guys, I'm a budding creative professional myself. I work with a boutique agency called AVDS, in case you've heard of it. And the one thing I really wanted to ask you was that how does one over time develop their creative judgment? Because I think somewhere everything that you guys have spoken about, that's the bit that we need to spend a couple of minutes on.
Okay, one person like to answer? Sunita, will you answer that?
Creative judgment is such a broad-based topic. And where can one begin? I mean, I think creative judgment is something that has to be not inculcated, but it has to be, thank you, it has to be nurtured way beyond they will reach an institution like Rishihood. This is my personal thing. And it grows with time. And I think one of the ways it is that we, in our school system, we do not allow children to dream. Which is what fosters imagination, which is what creates creativity. Until we have that, non-doing activity very much a part of what we are doing, I don't think what you're speaking about, critical judgment, will happen.
Anyway, I think we've really run out of time. Thank you, wonderful audience. Thank you, my panel, once again, and we interact with everybody. Thank you.